Warner Media as a company has decided that they are currently a direct-to-consumer digital-first company. And so everything they do now has to fit into that definition.
This goes out to the challengers. Comics and conversation, y'all. What? Keep the conversation moving along. Keep reading comics, keep your local store strong. And it's hard, and it's a job for the challengers. What? Comics and conversation, y'all.
From Challengers Comics and Conversation in Chicago, this is Contest of Challengers, a comics industry business podcast with Patrick Brower and W. Dale Bush.
I think Nathan had already been born.
Right, but that's what I said, in the future.
But he wasn't in the future yet.
No, I was making a word play because you said leave his kid behind.
I see.
And I'm saying no, in the future.
Eventually
Cable
he would
went
leave
to the
him
future.
behind in the future, yes.
So since I pushed the record button, would you mind repeating what you said about Cyclops?
From the start? Take it from the top?
If you don't mind.
Sure. We were talking about, you were quoting Chris Claremont as defining the point where
Cyclops was ruined as a character.
Stopped making sense to him was when Scott Summers left his wife behind and kid to go join the X Factor book that was being launched.
Yeah. When he left Madeline to go back to Jean.
Right. Which, even as you're quoting this from Chris Claremont, I have to keep bringing up the idea of like Madeline Pryor being closure for Scott doesn't make any sense because it basically he married a woman who looked just like his dead girlfriend. Like,
and also
to the point where he got genuinely confused when he first saw her because he's like, wait, that looks like Jean. So this concept of like Madeline being a break from his past and him putting it behind him. No, it's part of his weird trauma that he literally could not get over this woman. But like the larger point of, you know, Scott being this kind of steadfast, honorable guy,
moral backbone,
like
of the team.
Like the thing that doesn't work for that in me is that I always viewed Cyclops as being like Captain America if he didn't believe in himself. Like he's this guy who's genuinely great at what he does, who's capable of marshaling a ton of people, but fundamentally believes that it's imposter syndrome, that he is not the guy, that he's going to get people killed, that he's going to lose the team to whoever wants it instead of him, that he's going to lose his girlfriend to whoever on the team wants her more. Like, he's the guy who doesn't believe in himself. Yet he's also, like, to everyone else, he's, like, the guy. Like, Cyclops is the guy, but inside Cyclops' head, he's like, everybody hates me, I'm terrible at this, they're all going to figure it out tomorrow, I've barely gotten away with it this far. So the idea of Cyclops, like, blowing up his entire life to go, like, wherever Jean is when she comes back makes perfect sense to me. Of course that's Cyclops. Like, him being, like, Mr. Reliable is kind of not how Cyclops views Cyclops.
And just on a larger viewpoint of giving a character like that a happy ending, you can't give them a happy ending in an episodic comic where you need to have 22 pages of original story ideas every month.
Yeah, and
admittedly, he was letting Cyclops out of the book.
Sure.
But that's not his call.
Yeah, but I mean, for work for hire in a shared universe that's always in a perpetual second act, you can't do that. You can't ever just be like, no, we ended this character's story. Even Marvel Comics can't decide that because someone else could be in charge of Marvel Comics a year from now. And they're going to be like, oh no, we're bringing that character back tomorrow because we think there's a ton of money in him. So, yeah. I mean, fans can make that distinction. If fans want to say, like, Cyclops never came back to the X-Men after, you know, the Paul Smith era of art on Uncanny X-Men, fine, okay. You can make that decision.
But we needed Cyclops for the Joss Whedon run.
We did. He's great in the Joss Whedon run. He's great in the Grant Morrison run. He's great in the Hickman run. He's great in a lot of runs. I like Cyclops a whole lot. He was one of my favorite X-Men. Specifically because he sucks.
It's Mans. One of your favorite X-Mans?
My X-Mans. Yeah, it's because he's terrible. Like, I don't want characters that are good people who constantly make good choices. That doesn't work for me in drama. I want characters that are flawed. I want characters that are trying their best, but also let themselves and each other down on not a regular basis, but often enough that you can call it out.
But you don't want them to let people down in the same exact way, right?
No.
Because that's just boring.
It's true.
That's just real life.
Mm-hmm. One of my all-time favorite Cyclops moments is when everyone thought he'd murdered Emma Frost.
Yeah.
And he immediately takes off on his motorcycle, and like Bishop or Sage is just like, oh great, it's the search for Cyclops again. Just Grant Morrison completely calling out, oh yeah, when the chips are down, Cyclops
runs away.
He will bail. He will absolutely bail.
Well, so will Wolverine.
I guess.
Wolverine would get on his motorcycle and drive away too, to a bar.
But he wouldn't mope, he'd brood, and that's what makes him
Okay.
cool.
There you go. There's the difference.
I don't think Wolverine is that cool, and I certainly don't think he's cooler than Cyclops. That's just me, though.
Well, how many books is Cyclops starring in right now? Maybe one?
Yeah, I mean,
Technically, kind of one?
I guess the same amount as Wolverine, and that anybody could show up in any of the Ten of Swords books right now.
Yeah, but how many teams is...
Is the Wolverine on?
Yeah.
I don't know if they specifically view things as really teams anymore, so
Sure.
much as just characters doing different things in different books. Like, essentially, Jean Grey is on both X-Force and X-Men, but kind of not really. Yeah. It's a tough one.
I was going to mention some things from Ten of Swords from this week, but I don't want any spoilers for people.
Sure, not everyone's picking their books up every week.
It's just that they took... and I think I said this last week, that I'm a big fan of all of the opponents that the X-Men have to face for the Ten of Swords.
Yes.
But they took one of the best ones and made them way less best.
I don't know about that.
I mean, it was a fun...
It's a neat reveal.
It's a neat reveal, but they also kind of ruined the character, I think.
I'm sorry to hear that.
You don't think that?
I don't think that.
You're still as excited by that character?
I'm fine with it.
Huh.
Because I think the reveal is in how they describe how they came to that conclusion, I thought was interesting, and it made it work for me.
And believe me, I'm sure that they were cognizant of that at that character's introduction.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, that's not the sort of thing that, like, 3 weeks later you're like, oh, here's what happens. Like, that has to be part of the design. Like, this whole thing was mapped out well before anyone started scripting it, I have to think.
It's just a little less cool,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Sure.
I no longer want that Build-A-Figure.
Aw.
That's all I'm saying.
I think you just gave it away.
That's all I'm saying. Nah, you have to assume people remember what we talk about. We never do.
It's true. I never do.
That's why I take notes. And I just noticed as I said that, my notebook is closed.
Whoops.
Next to me. Not that Dal's defining Cyclops is really a talking point of what we planned on
No.
For this episode, but I'll still write it down. Cyclops.
Glad we got to talk about it, though. I always like talking about Cyclops.
I was doing the Lunar FOCs today
Oh, thanks.
at the store, the DC ones. And I like doing it at the store because the two systems haven't merged yet, and it doesn't accurately show sales data.
Right.
So I get to go to the shelf and physically look what we have. Here's a quick question for you.
Yes.
For Dark Knight's Death Metal 4, we had almost 3 copies of every cover on the shelf.
Yep.
Is that a book that you would have put things...
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though it's the newest one?
Because 5 came out this week, and we had a lot of copies of 4.
Oh, man.
A lot.
Okay, so that messed up my numbering a lot, because I'm like, no, it's the most recent issue. He wouldn't have pulled it. It must just be coincidence.
I did because it still left 12 copies on the shelf. And I felt like that was enough to get us through a week, considering it had mostly stopped selling. Yeah, in order to get it to be not a shelf, basically, I needed to put those in the back because there were so many copies of the variant covers left. So many.
And I was afraid of that, but I just didn't go look.
Sorry.
Because it's already a pain in the ass enough to have to bounce between the 2 different programs.
I know.
And then go to the shelf.
Sorry.
And then go to the back room.
Generally, I wouldn't, but the only circumstances where I do it is if a book was releasing its new issue that week, and we had a ton of copies of the last one.
Well, that made me think, oh man, we sold more of these than I thought.
We definitely did not.
I'm not going to drop this number nearly as much.
Oh, drop it.
I mean, they were small, but you told me to up them. You're like, hey, you're cutting these too low.
For Death Metal?
Yeah. Well, for the one-shots and things.
Oh, for some of the one-shots. I mean, even then, I think it ended up... The only one that we really sold out of was Rise of the New God.
Yeah, well,
So far.
there's a very specific reason for that one.
Oh, is it some stupid first
Yeah,
appearance?
yeah. Well, it
Of
is.
what?
It's. We didn't talk about this last week, but
Fine.
the future of the DC universe, which is being called not for real, but it's being called the DC Omniverse, starts in that book.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So that's why everybody wanted and still wants that book
Jesus.
over everything else. That's why you look and say, why do we sell out of one of these? Oh, for
Some stupid
speculator
speculator
reasons. Yeah.
Sure. I've mentioned this before, but I hate how subjective all that stuff is and how it doesn't seem to have any sort of strict rules. Like, again, I read that issue and nothing in it jumped out at me as like, oh, this is a big new character. Like, sometimes you can see it where it's like, oh, the Robin King. Yeah, people are going to care about this kid. I mean, he's like the Robin version of the Batman Who Laughs, so yeah, people are going to want that. But when it's just something where someone goes, oh, a thing that hasn't happened yet, had it start in this comic, is like beyond speculation. Like, you can't point to anything. It's like saying, oh, that background character, they're going to go on to be the 56th Batman 100 years from now. They showed up in this background panel.
It's like the argument of that issue of Thor that had an ad in it for Wolverine 181.
Right.
So everyone's like, no, that's the first appearance of Wolverine.
I mean, the first appearance of the Batman Who Laughs is in a Teen Titans comic that randomly came out like the week before the character showed up in Dark Knight's Metal, I think.
Yeah.
Which was not how it was supposed to be. It doesn't really make a ton of sense. But that's how it happened. So that's, in some people's minds, that's the first appearance of the character. I think pretty much everyone's minds.
And do you remember who the official first artist was for it?
I don't.
I think it was Mirka Andolfo.
Oh, okay. Sure. Great.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's ridiculous, and I hope everybody who sunk $6 on that book because they think they're going to have some massive payday never makes a dime back from it. I really hope so.
But going back to the DC FOCs, and it wasn't a big week, but it's annoying because there's 2 covers for every DC book minimum. Except Last God, which, oh, hey, I'm thankful for that. That's easy.
Sure.
Almost everything was keeping my numbers or cutting. I went up on nothing.
Right.
Went up on nothing. But I was working with Gina today, and every time I get to a book, I will click on it to open up the cover art and see the history of the sales history, or the, not sales history,
order history.
The order history. And unprompted, Gina just said, DC's covers all look so bad. And it's not like she's against DC or anything. It's just like they don't call to her in any way as a comic fan.
Took a look with her 2 eyeballs and went, no, thank you.
Yeah, and then it was specifically we were looking at also the new email we got from DC with revealed the covers for Death Metal 6 or 7 or whatever issue, I don't care.
Yeah, 7. I don't remember.
With all the variant covers, it's like, oh, look at this really awful Batman Who Laughs cover, and then this other Batman Who Laughs cover.
Yeah,
and yeah, it's just there's obviously a core of the fan base they do not appeal to at all.
I guess. A lot of talk about DC comic books this week, Patrick. I'm sure you've got an agenda for this podcast.
I do not at all.
But let me, since we're talking about it, did you read Hibbs's new column?
I read half of it, and then we had to leave. I left it on the desktop, and I literally was so busy today.
Sure.
And not ringing people up. Definitely not for ringing people up.
Okay.
But I got less than half done I wanted to today.
Okay.
Every order we got today had some major issues with it.
Oh, yeah, I saw.
And I made sure to include you on those emails.
Thank
so
you.
On the replies, you would get them.
Thank you.
So you could see. But for the second order in a row, we're missing a bunch of toys from one of our distributors. And for the second order in a row, a whole bunch of DC books come damaged from the other distributor that we use. And it's all the same corner, but the box wasn't I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very annoying.
It sure is
to do. But anyway, why don't we talk about Brian Hibbs' column?
Well, I mean, it's gonna be tough to do if you haven't read the whole thing.
I mean, why don't you start, and then you could either teach me.
Okay. Well, I mean, the thing is, there were a couple of specific things I wanted to call out, but they were near the end of the article.
So
this isn't going to make a ton of sense. Basically, Brian Hibbs...
You're assuming that the people listening have read it then, too.
I would suggest they do read it. It's on the Comics Beat. It's the new Tilting at Windmills from retailer Brian Hibbs.
Like they gave me too much credit, and I'm sure you have an agenda for today. I don't.
I mean, frequently you do.
Frequently I do. This time I absolutely do not.
Sure.
That's why I just hit record and you're talking about Cyclops.
That's because that was important. People need to know about that.
Your whole take Cyclops is fresh.
It is.
As the kids say, jam.
Straight off the dome.
They don't make that up.
So anyway, the new Tilting a Windmills column is kind of covering the last few months of DC nonsense. And a lot of it is sort of coming to conclusions about where Brian thinks the DC part of Warner Media is headed, based on firings and things they've said publicly and sort of the market in general and moves they've been making in distribution. And one of the things that gets brought up is that Brian's drawing some of the same conclusions that we have, which is that it seems like DC is going to be heading towards a largely digital-first graphic novel collection publication plan, which eventually will transition to just licensing those characters out to another publisher to actually do comics from. And that's stuff that we talked about because the thing that maybe gets missed in some of the DC moves is that people are trying to look at them as, well, DC as a publisher is profitable, or these things, they're streamlining to make it more profitable, or they're cutting costs, and it's like, that's not what's happening. What's happening is that Warner Media as a company has decided that they are currently a direct-to-consumer digital-first company. And so everything they do now has to fit into that definition. So doing things that basically put projects like HBO Max at the forefront, it doesn't make sense to then publish comic books. Like, to make and print comic books is irrelevant. Like, what? That's not part of who they are as a company.
This is not at all them looking at the comics industry saying, hey, this is what's best for our individual comic producing plans. This is, hey, this is what our company is about.
Yeah.
Everybody will follow suit.
Yeah, Warner Media looks at DC publishing comics like if Marvel suddenly decided they wanted to make pizza. It's like, you could do that, but that's not who you are as a company. No one's asking you to do that. Stop doing that. So,
do you think like the Human Torch pizza would be extra spicy, like jalapenos and more fiery?
No, to be made in a wood oven.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And would the Captain America one have like giant slices of pepperoni with stars in them?
No, it would have concentric rings of
sauce and cheese.
Sauce.
And,
yeah. It would be produced in like almost like that kind of concentric circle.
I have two more.
Go on.
Is the Hulk pizza mainly spinach?
There is a lot of spinach on it. Yes, it's also the largest size pizza. It is a 24-inch pizza.
Lastly, and I'm sure we could keep going, but I just figured I'd cut it off.
Well, you can keep going.
Is the Iceman pizza a frozen pizza you take home?
No, it is actually an ice cream pizza that you can get as a dessert.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I like how that no matter what I said, you had no, it's this.
You're not familiar with their menu. I get it. It's all new. It's fine.
Anded me.
I did. I definitely did. So anyway,
I'm really interested in the idea of Marvel making pizzas, by the way.
I'm sure people on the Patreon can add comments where they help us design the Marvel pizza menu.
The Marvel
that I'll never look at.
Pizziatic universe.
Uh-huh. But anyway.
Make mine mozzarella.
So there's some of the conclusions that Brian draws at the end that I slightly disagree with. One that he brings up is that the thing that is addictive about comics, superhero comics specifically, are the shared universe aspect.
Yeah.
So that DC's potential plans of, like you said, the Omniverse, where it's rumored that things will be less continuity based and a little bit more whatever people want to publish, is detrimental. And things like the digital comics that have done out of continuity stories are not that successful because they are explicitly out of continuity stories. They only become successful when they're printed or whatever.
I think that one title that actually emphasizes both of those, plus and minus, is Deceased.
Okay, sure.
Because it's out of continuity.
Uh-huh.
It's their biggest digital success, but it's a shared universe. It is everybody from the DC universe in that story, and that means other planets, other dimensions.
The thing I disagree with Brian's thing that it's the connectivity that really makes it important. Not people don't want to read a Batman story; they want to read a Batman story that matters to the DC universe. The thing that doesn't make that work for me is that even in his discussion about DC's print publications and kind of what they sell, he brings up that Batman Damned sold 144,000 copies for the first issue. Batman Damned is explicitly out of continuity.
Explicitly?
Yeah. That's a book that, like a lot of Black Label stuff, was designed to be special project oriented and not tied to their current superhero publishing. If anything, if you look at DC's sales data and you take out the Batman comic book, which will always be a top 10 book because it's the Batman comic book, everything that DC's had success with is special projects. The stuff that sells is Death Metal, is Three Jokers, it's not a Justice League comic book, that the Superman comic book. Those don't sell. People don't care about those. They care about Doomsday Clock, you know? They care about that stuff. That is the stuff that sells well for DC as a publisher. So the idea of DC kind of abandoning continuity for more special projects oriented is one of the few decisions DC could make in 2021 that would make sense to me. Because that's, anecdotally, that's our experience, is that the things that are getting people excited about DC were things like Black Label, you know?
Yeah, definitely in our store, for sure.
The monthly superhero comics, most of those DC has been canceling because they don't sell.
Hellblazer Rise and Fall sells like 3 times more than that, even, better than our normal Hellblazer series.
For sure. Wonder Woman Dead Earth outsold Wonder Woman.
Yeah. To be fair, Wonder Woman is plummeting for us.
It is.
Still.
But that's the thing, like, there have been Wonder Woman special projects that have sold well. The Wonder Woman comic no one wants to buy. So the idea of, you know, a move to special projects oriented publishing being like the death knell for DC, like, I would say that's the only move they can make at this point. Based on like, Marvel's always been the opposite. You look at Marvel and their top sellers are monthly X-Men comics, monthly Venom comics. The special projects do well, but they don't necessarily like completely eclipse the regular publishing. Amazing Spider-Man still sells pretty goddamn well from issue to issue. It doesn't need to be an event because Amazing Spider-Man will always sell. And Marvel has a bunch of books like that where they can make new launches chart really high and also occasionally keep some of those around in the top 20 for a while. DC can't really seem to manage that. Most of their books are just, their continuing comics are just hemorrhaging readers. Flash sells probably half of what it sold a year ago.
Yeah.
And which in turn is like a third of what it sold 2 years ago, and so on. The other thing that Brian brings up is that he talks about how stupid it is for DC as a publisher to abandon print publication in favor of digital, because digital, historically, since there has been a digital marketplace, sells so much less than print. And you can look at the charts year after year, and he brings up a lot of numbers, and you know, the book trade is you know, X amount, and the digital market is like around also X amount. But then the single comics publishing, the direct market, is like 5 or 6 times X. It's huge. It's massive. If you kept anything, you would keep that. But again, like, the reason that would be gotten rid of wouldn't be because it's not profitable or not as profitable as another thing, so much as it's a different segment of the market that DC and Warner Media do not have any interest in pursuing any longer. But even beyond that, the conclusion he comes to is that you're giving up the very valuable part of your business to pursue the not very valuable part of your business. And by doing that, you're creating a dynamic where you can't afford to keep your market going, and then it collapses. You know, you're giving up $150 million to make $30 million, but your overhead is, you know, $50 million. So now what? These are made up numbers that I'm just coming up with to give people a sense of scale. The thing that doesn't work with that analysis for me is that it's all based on the idea of people having choices. The digital market is 20% the size of the print market because people are choosing to buy print comics over digital comics. Well, what if they couldn't choose? What if it was just digital comics? If you're telling me that the entire market that buys Batman comics would overnight decide that they don't want it if it's not in print, 100% of that market disappearing, I don't believe that. I believe that there's a sizable part of that market, maybe not a majority, but a sizable part, that would either do digital or wait for the print collection. They've been reading Batman comics their entire life. They will read them in a different format. It's not the end of the world for them. There's plenty of people that if they come into the comic shop and there's not a Batman comic on the shelf, they will just forget about it. But that is not the whole market. So the concept of it would be immediately catastrophic is like, I mean, it would be bad. It would be real bad. But I don't know that it would be a 100% loss for DC.
Sure.
So those were 2 things from the Brian Hibbs article, that conclusions he drew where I'm like, I don't know that I'd agree with that. I get your data, but I think it's making a lot of historical assumptions that because you're changing the scope of what the market is, I don't know that you can say those are definitely going to happen.
Yeah, it's hard to look back at history and predict what will happen because the models that you're using don't necessarily apply to today.
Yeah, the paradigm's changed. Like,
Would you call it a paradigm shift?
I would not. So yeah, that was the
Would you call it a Judas effect?
I would not. So it was the Brian Hibbs article, and I would recommend people read it in its entirety. It's always interesting to see Brian's analysis, and I'm glad that he's doing well enough now physically that he's able to put together a gigantic article like that. It was interesting to see that come about because even before he'd released that, I'd had people ask me on consecutive days if I thought DC Comics was going away in 2021, which is usually a question I don't get that often, and it's certainly not one I've ever had to go,
maybe.
kind of.
As we know them, yes.
Yeah.
That's already happened, though.
It's been weird to have people say, like, I wonder what's coming up after Future State, and I have to go, a much smaller DC publishing line. That's what's coming out. Like, if you think they're coming out of Future State and into March with, like, a huge new line of books, like, it's going to be some new books, but it's going to be a smaller line of books.
And that's the weird thing, because the people that we talked about being let go, they're still with them through Future State.
Yeah. Yeah.
What week of the month do you usually get? And I don't know this doesn't necessarily correspond anymore. But do the DC solicits make it online for new month? Like, or is it always like, the 17th or
Oh,
whatever?
they went up this week. I mean,
Okay.
DC Connect went out to retailers today.
Yeah, that I knew, but I just wondered if it was going to be different moving forward, because who cares what they're offering for February, because it's Future State week or month 2.
Yeah, I think there's one or two new one-shots or miniseries that are in there, but otherwise the rest of it is all stuff that was launched in the previous month that they're just finishing out.
Tying into Speculators and Future State. So the CW announced that they're working on a potential series for the new Wonder Girl.
Right. Who in Future State is Wonder Woman, Yara Flor.
Who hasn't existed yet.
Correct. She's a brand new creation by Joelle Jones for Future State.
So, is that a hot book?
I assume it's going to be.
Right, but I mean, my question is, let's say you were going to order 25 copies of that book. Based off of Future State, pre-orders, anything else. Now with this new information,
so
what does that mean?
Here's the thing that makes it extra stupid. In the same way that we were talking about, is Wolverine's first appearance an ad in Thor?
Yeah.
I think there's people who are looking at the Future State preview book that's coming out next week on the 25th.
Oh, God.
As potentially being Yara Flor's first appearance, because it is the first comic book that features her in it. Even though it's all promotional and it's not the story, it might be considered her first appearance. It's certainly her first cover appearance. So there's that.
Now, I grant you that Captain Carrot's first appearance was an issue of Teen Titans, but that's because there was a Captain Carrot and his Amazing Zoo Crew, 8-page story inserted in the middle. So It was an official standalone comic that happened to be...
Yep.
So that's a whole different thing. But, so are you saying no then to increasing numbers based off of that?
I'm saying I don't know. We would go up anyway because it's the Joelle Jones Wonder Woman
Well,
book.
okay, but my question was...
For speculation, I have no idea.
Yeah,
I don't ever want...
knowing what you would get for that book normally, would you order more?
I don't ever want to play that game. Because the second we do that, we guess wrong. Because that market is 99% unpredictable.
I mean, we didn't guess wrong on TMNT Last Ronin.
That wasn't for speculators, though.
It was partially for it, wasn't it?
No, it was because we were getting people who were signing up for the subscription service because they're like, I can't wait to read that story. We had people who don't even read Turtles comics and have never bought a Turtles comic from us going, I really want that. It was because of friends of yours who heard us describing it as Dark Knight Returns but Turtles going, I definitely want to read that book. That was... The fact that there were speculators...
Just mine, huh? Just my friend?
Just your friend. The fact that there were speculators, yeah, I mean, that was going to happen. But, I mean, that happened after we locked our orders in. That was... I didn't go up to the number we went up to because of speculators. I went because I thought there was going to be significant and sustained interest in that book, and there was.
Well, there's significant interest. It will be sustained.
Well, I guess we'll see, but I mean, there's still sustained interest in issue 1. We still have people asking for it.
Yeah, even
today. Signing up for the series.
Yeah.
So there's that. Something like this... I don't ever want to order a book that I don't know if there's going to be reader interest because I think there might be speculator interest. I was working in stores and you were working in stores when people ordered that way and they went out of business. I don't ever want to do that. I don't ever want to bet the store on something I don't even believe in.
Oh, I mean, I don't consider that kind of a bet.
No, I mean,
Even
not
when
one
we
book,
do go
certainly,
up.
but that's, as a philosophy, it's betting the store, you know?
Okay, so let's talk about Endless Winter,
Okay.
Black Adam.
Not Winter is Coming, which is the one thing I'm actually excited about in December.
Yes, sure.
Endless Winter, which is the thing I'm not excited about at all.
Endless Winter, Black Adam special.
Okay.
According to the system,
Uh-huh.
we have 0 people down for it.
Well,
Well, I know. Pullbox hasn't happened yet.
no,
No,
it's,
I'm sorry.
no, it's,
But the special orders are hidden.
yeah, Pullbox has been eating the DC orders.
Okay.
People are down for it.
Okay. Are they?
Couple, at least.
Well, so what would you order for that book? Because I had to FOC it today.
What did you do for Justice
No.
League?
I mean, Justice League. It wasn't the next issue. Like, next issues of actual series, like Justice League Dark or Flash, they got their normal issue orders.
Sure. What's that? What's that number? They're pretty similar.
For which one? For Justice League? And,
Justice League Dark and Flash.
Flash is like 14,
Yeah, it was Justice League Dark.
9.
So, 12 or 13?
For what?
Black Adam.
But,
You were asking me about Black
yeah,
Adam.
okay. Yeah, but then you brought up Justice League.
Yeah, well, I was trying to get a comparison of, and for mostly for people listening, what
Okay, so
series
why?
would be looking
Why
at?
would you do that? Do you assume everybody who gets Flash or Dark would want these books?
No, I'm presuming that there's probably a core of DC readers that are probably going to want it, and there's somewhere between the people who buy Justice League Dark and the people who buy Flash.
Well, I did half that.
Okay?
Now I don't know if you want me to go back and...
I'll be honest,
Raise or not.
I don't even care about
Yeah.
Endless Winter.
Yeah.
I've said it before. I don't... This whole thing is
Well,
so stupid.
I
so-
initial ordered normal numbers on, like, Justice League Special. I put Justice League numbers. Then I cut it down to 12.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the problem is this is a part-to-part special, so I don't know that Black Adam is going to suddenly sell better than an issue of Flash, is going to sell better than an issue of Justice League, or is going to sell significantly worse than them. The people who are buying Justice League Endless Winter Special #1 are going to want the next 7 chapters, because otherwise what the hell are they doing?
I mean...
Well, let me rephrase that. The people who are buying Part 2 of Endless Winter are going to want the rest of the series, because
Sure.
otherwise what the hell are they doing?
At the time I FOC'd Endless Winter, we had 3 people down for it.
Yeah, that number's not going to change.
Yeah.
It's not going to change until the book comes out. And then we're going to have to be like, I don't know if we can get you that anymore. And let me finish my statement from earlier. I don't care if we sell it, because I think the whole thing is so stupid. I think it's
Yeah.
impossible to order a month's worth of one story by one creative team that
Spread out over...
that includes specials for books that were already canceled. So it's like, if you had just said we're doing a 5-issue weekly Justice League Endless Winter series, at least I could figure that out.
Right.
But when you're suddenly deciding, oh, one of them is just an issue of Flash. Okay, does that mean Flash people are going to want the other 6 parts? Does that mean they're just going to skip this because it's not even by, Kevin Shinnick anymore, let alone Josh Williamson? Like, it's stupid. It's a terrible, terrible way of doing this. And because you're doing it all in 1 month, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care to get it right. I don't care to maximize sales on that book. I would rather just get through the month and be done with it.
Yeah,
Thanks, DC.
put all the preview pages you want in the back of books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one's asking for it.
And then to
and
do
I shouldn't
that-
say no one. We've had 2 or 3 people ask for it.
To do that and then immediately go into Future State?
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yep.
I mean,
At least Future State's returnable. I can't remember if Endless Winter is.
I don't recall that it is. I feel like it's one more way they're showing their disdain for retailers.
Yeah, it's super adversarial. I don't like it. It definitely doesn't make me want to do my best to sell those books. I mostly just want to grudgingly carry what few copies I have to and then put it out of my mind. That's a great way to feel about a publishing quote-unquote partner, is that you will not even indulge them, but you will... I can't even think of a way to describe it. You barely tolerate them.
Wait,
Yeah,
are you talking about me and customers now?
I said out loud, unprompted, on Tuesday
Yeah.
or Wednesday, that I'm sure I'll regret this in 2021, but I can't wait for DC to go out of business.
Yes, you absolutely did say that.
It's every week.
Unprompted.
It's some new stupid problem between the actual publishing of their comics, the way their distribution works, how their distribution doesn't work with our systems. I'm so tired of it. I'm unbelievably sick of DC being a weight around my neck. So tired of it. not worth it on any level. Like,
And it's not
no.
as if you can even point to a thing like, well, hopefully it'll resolve by this occurrence.
They never will. I was looking at the emails that we sent out today that people once again missed, that we said that their DC stuff won't be listed in the Friday emails, like we've said the last.
Is there a way you can make that the top of the email and also in like a 24-point font?
Do you know how often people miss the thing at the top that says this is for books coming out on next
Yeah,
Wednesday?
that's
And
true.
we have people coming in that Tuesday like, oh, I got an email saying it came in. No, you got an email saying it's coming in tomorrow.
When we first started doing Tuesday night emails, wasn't the whole thing like, hey, we're having a hard time reconciling DC nut orders and things, so we're giving you this second email.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, it specifically says in the Tuesday emails, hey, this one has all your DC stuff.
Yeah.
In bold. Anyway, there's a thing in the Friday emails that says that, currently our DC stuff isn't received the same way, and there's not really a way that we can report stuff ahead of time for DC stuff like we can for every other publisher, but hopefully that'll resolve itself. But at this point, I'm like, DC will go out of business, or at least stop publishing comics long before
This
that
is
ever
resolved.
gets fixed. So I was almost like, what if I just take this out of there? I might just change the language on it, where it's like the DC stuff will never be listed on Fridays ever again at the end. Like, because that's... if it changes, if Comic Suite somehow gets the cooperation from DC and Lunar that's actually going to make that viable, yeah, great. I'd love to be wrong. But, I mean, again, it's been like 6 months, and basic functionality for DC stuff does not work with Comic Suite. Does not work with Pullbox.
No.
Like, it's not getting any better. So, yeah. Yeah, really tired of DC Comics as a company. Now that they've fired the few people that I knew there that I cared about, they can go away now. That's fine.
When you got the email from that club member today, did you laugh? And did you wonder if I would go the same route that I had been going?
I knew you would.
Okay.
I didn't have a doubt in my mind. I knew what the follow-up email was going to look like.
I just thought you might thought I would tone it down.
If anything, I thought you'd be more mean about it.
Well, they did have an injury this week.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
I did put that into consideration
Okay.
when composing it. Speaking of injuries, we had today alone multiple club members
Not one, but two.
email us to say they have
They
COVID
got the COVIDs.
and won't be in for a while. And I appreciated that both of them said, hey, I need to put something in place to get my books. But my first thought for both of them was, when is the last time they were here?
Right.
Could they have caused any damage to people here?
Right.
And for one of them, they haven't been in like 2 months or so.
Months.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well outside of the incubation rate.
And the other one hadn't been in for like a week and a half.
Right. And not on a day I was working. So that was the thing that in my mind, I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah.
But that said, so I was talking to a friend today about that, and the first thing they said was like, oh, it's so cool that they told you, that, that like warning you that they had contracted it. Like, we were being notified, and I had to go, no, they were just making sure their books didn't get put back out. It was not like, I'm contacting everyone, which, by the way, can I mention that the iPhone contact tracing for COVID does not work in Illinois?
Yeah, I did notice that
Super
in
cool.
the article. Yeah.
Super cool.
It only works in a handful of states.
I wish it worked in our state.
I know, but I
I
mean,
wish the
like,
handful was much
for saying
bigger.
like, hey, your iPhone does it. It's like 12 states out of 50.
I mean, if any state should be doing it right now, I feel like Illinois is maybe one. We just moved to back to tier 3
yeah.
restrictions.
Well, a modified tier 3.
Like, I mean, I got an emergency notice on my phone telling me we moved to tier 3.
Right, but tier 3 is you shut your business down.
Sure. Well, regardless, I mean, they're calling it tier 3.
Right.
Anyway,
It feels like people are. I'm sorry. Go ahead, and we'll get back to,
Sure.
get to my thing in a minute.
but the I'm trying to remember what I was going to say now.
You were talking about people who were. You think they're more worried about their books
Oh.
than about contact tracing.
Well, so the one thing that it's while I was doing what you were doing, which was trying to figure out like when was the last time they came in, what could they have spread. I assume that there's a non-zero amount of people that come into Challengers right now that have COVID. Either they know it or they don't know it.
yeah,
But it's a number that's above zero.
right, which is why.
Which is why we have mask policies, which
Right.
is why we do social distancing, which is why we limit the number of people in the store, which is why we have the plexiglass.
Yeah.
Which is why we do all the things we do, because you don't do that because you assume no one has it. You do that because you assume some people probably do have it.
Yeah.
So, I obviously, if you have tested for it, even if you haven't tested positive, if you're waiting for your results, do not come to the store. We will work with you. There will probably be an email that goes out to all of our subscribers in the next week or two that says, look, if you don't want to leave the house for any reason, we will work with you on your books. Do you want us to ship them out? We'll do that. Do you want us to leave them outside for curbside pickup? We'll do that. Do you want us to keep them aside for you? We will send you an invoice as long as they're paid for.
When you
they
say
can
leave
stay
them outside for
indefinitely.
curbside pickup, you mean at our store, not
Right.
not
Yes,
delivery.
not deliver them.
We're not
I
moving
mean,
delivery. We're not making deliveries.
Not yet, no.
That's only if the store is closed down.
Yeah.
And we have the
And
time.
we have Wednesdays free. But
Yeah.
even then, I don't know if we would, because we were doing that because books were not coming out. So there was no new release day.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
there
that-
were still books coming out, we probably have to, one of us at least would have to be at the store
Yeah.
to accommodate people who wanted to come by and have their books picked up.
Curbsided. And I think that there'd be way too many deliveries to get through in a day
But-
if it was new books.
But my point is this: we will. I am not currently looking at our subscription service as something where we need to be kicking people off because they're not coming in. I get all of the reasons why people would not come in. I get it, and I don't blame them, and I want people to feel safe. And if that means their books sit on hold a little longer, we will work with you on that. I don't want to say that's fine because we do still need some revenue to come in at some point, but we will work with you.
But
Don't worry about that stuff just getting thrown out on the shelf without you knowing about it. We desperately want to make sure that everyone is safe, and then alongside that, we want to make sure that they feel comfortable about what's going on with their subscriptions. If that means for the time being you end them and we revisit subscriptions in 2021, that's fine too. Like, don't let it be a stress. Of all the things that are going on in 2020, don't let your weekly books at Challengers be a thing that you're worrying about.
However, and I will point to the phrasing of, we will work with you.
Yep.
That doesn't mean you can ignore us.
No, and that's the thing. Like,
Books are still getting put back on shelves. Customers are still being dropped.
right. I wanted to make it clear, though, that the way I phrased it, it's not going to happen without you knowing about it. We will be sending out emails. We may be giving people a little bit more slack and sending out more emails letting people know, hey, we really don't want to put this stuff back out, but it's not going to be the usual, you got a week to come in. There's a pandemic. It's getting way worse in Illinois. I do not feel comfortable threatening people in that climate.
Sure. Thanksgiving is next week.
Yes, still.
Already there have been reports about O'Hare being super crowded from people leaving town early
Yep,
for Thanksgiving holidays.
yep. Something the CDC has asked people not to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is
40%
funny.
of Americans have said they are still going to be going through with their Thanksgiving plans.
Like
40%.
normal Friday people who are in, I would say, like, hey, have a safe Thanksgiving, whatever you do. And it's funny the way people will be like, yeah, I'm going to my mom's. Oh, but it's just going to be my mom, me, my wife, and, this, like, everybody feels the need to say, I am still going, but here's how it is not your traditional Thanksgiving.
Even still.
Yeah.
A few people this week, when the city and the state were talking more about restrictions that were going to go into place because of the climbing numbers of COVID cases, people had said, how are these restrictions going to affect Challengers? Are you guys going to be okay? And I basically said, we will, as long as everyone does the smart thing.
Yeah.
The next step after this, if people cannot control themselves around Thanksgiving, is that we do get shut down again, and that's not good for us.
Right.
That is going to be another huge hit to our business in 2020, if and more likely when that happens, because people are being irresponsible. It reminds me of the hey, we're the pandemic is just starting, and we're asking people to be safe and don't really go to parks and stuff. Like, next day everyone's on the 606. Cool, we're shutting the 606 down. St. Patrick's Day weekend. Hey everybody, please don't go to bars and stuff. There is a virus that's going around. Photos of packed bars, tour buses filled with people going on pub crawls.
Yep.
Next day, cool, we're shutting the bars down. Thanks. Good job, everybody. So yeah, I firmly expect that while the governor and the mayor are saying, please don't make Thanksgiving a super spreading event, Illinois and Chicago residents 100% will. I'm sorry, 40% will.
Yeah. If not more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, Gina and I were talking today about how at this point almost everybody who's had a birthday has had a COVID birthday.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, like, Lizzie hasn't because hers is early in the year, but she's about to.
Right.
Like, she's going to have a COVID
the
birthday.
people who ducked it in like January and February,
it's coming back around.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And
Vaccines
I think,
aren't coming that fast.
see, that's just the thing. I think that people see that vaccines are, 95% effective and think, oh, great, we have vaccines. Yeah, but you don't have a vaccination.
Right. And even then, like, yeah, it's still going to be masks for a while. It's still, like, the people who think of this as, like, you're going to, like, vaccinations are going to exist. You're going to get one, and the next day it's like, sunshine through the windows, birds singing on the windowsill, COVID's defeated. Like, no. It is a process. It's a very long process for us as a country, and then beyond that, a world, to put this enough in the rear view. It's not. It is not going to happen in a day.
In 2008, when Barack Obama won his first term as United States president, I thought there would be an immediate sigh of relief, and people would be more excited and willing to, like, all right, things are going to be okay, and spend more money, because it was a rough time for business. We were brand new, and
Sure, yeah.
and it didn't happen. I'm like, but wait, everyone should be happier now. And it doesn't turn around like that. It takes time.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're definitely right. There's people who shop at the store who are most likely infected, and like I'm sure,
Sure, and-
at any
and-
single point,
And probably didn't
when
even know
you're
it.
in Target, multiple people have it.
Right. And again, that's why the masks.
Yeah, and the hand sanitizer.
Yeah,
and all
I mean,
that.
all of it. Everything we do is to mitigate the risk of, if, like, there have been places in the country where, like beauty salons, where people who were working there had COVID and managed not to spread it because everyone was wearing masks and everyone was practicing, the restrictions and regulations that were dictated by science. And because of that, they did not create a scenario where everybody got COVID. So that's the things that we look at in our business, is how do we prevent that? How do we, I can't swab everybody who comes in the door to make sure they don't have COVID. But if they do have it, we can try to work to make sure that they're not spreading it around at Challengers.
Gina hadn't been in for 2 weeks, and she asked how the new restrictions were going to affect us. And I said, basically, we don't have to do anything different because everything we've been doing was already at this level.
Right.
Like, we have a limit of 12 people in the store. That is like 25% capacity.
Yeah.
Like, you could easily have 50 people in the store.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it'd be a little bit tight, but that would be, and even that wouldn't be full capacity,
No.
basically. So I'm comfortable staying at the number that we're at.
Yeah.
And yeah, so things like that are we already have a mask policy. We have the hand sanitizing station as soon as you walk in.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of people honking horns outside. That's not COVID related. So I think it is going to affect business. I think people will not be coming in as frequently as they were.
Yeah, I think it's going to be similar to some stuff we were seeing during the lockdowns and stuff, where maybe people, like, the kind of, spur of the moment trip, or the, once a week trip is maybe going to be something where it's a little bit more measured, something that's maybe more every 3 weeks or once a month.
Yeah, it's difficult to move into the Christmas season. A lot of retail adjacent sites and publications are like, hey, shop early. You don't know when the stores are going to close,
Sure.
and they could use the money.
Yeah.
But traditionally, we don't see a financial bump of Christmas sales until right before Christmas.
Yeah.
And we're getting closer to it. But the last Wednesday was fine. Thursday and Friday this week, not great.
Okay.
But I mean, we'll see what happens.
Sure.
The city had already entered into this newer phase a week ago, but now the state followed suit.
Okay.
And that's why you got those alerts as well.
Okay, yeah, because I was weird to get that today, because I'm like, I thought it was Monday. But that was just the city, not the state.
I thought that it was definitely, yeah. And I felt like the city was trying to do it to stave off any possible changes from Springfield, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
So I don't know, obviously no one knows what to expect, but I don't think that they would, like, they need to go 2 weeks to see how this affects anything.
Yeah, I mean, this is a month-long change, at
Unless-
least from the city. Like, they'd originally said 30 days, because it's basically 2 weeks before Thanksgiving to get people to not go, and
Yeah.
then 2 weeks after Thanksgiving to see where the numbers are at.
I would not be surprised at all if the next shutdown comes like January 2nd.
Maybe.
Like, hey, businesses will give you Christmas.
That's the thing. I mean, there's really a sense of not a ton of political will to shut down businesses again.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I good Lord, that honking. I wish I knew where that was happening.
You know, for the amount of money we paid for the studio, it should be soundproof.
Good God. It is really annoying. Very hard to maintain a thought when you're hearing all that honking. But yeah, I'm not sure that... I keep saying that I think we're going to get shut down again, but I don't know if they're even going to go to that level because I think they're doing literally everything they can to avoid that because it is the toughest
Oh, it's the death knell
restriction to bring
for
back.
how many more restaurants have closed this week. Dal, did you hear? And I'm very sorry if you haven't. I'm going to tell you.
Did McDonald's go out of business?
Morton's on State Street closed.
Oof.
Like, that didn't temporarily close, shut down.
Yeah.
Like, they're done.
Yeah. It's underground, I think.
And that's where COVID lives.
It is under the ground. Yeah, certainly, and we've talked about this before, I feel like if there were better federal financial assistance for these businesses in different parts of the country, I feel like states would be shutting more stuff down because it's like, well, we can help you get through the tough parts.
Yeah.
But with there basically not being any more money to give out and states not having any money to begin with, it's just like the next shutdown is going to be incredibly difficult for any business that managed to survive this far into 2020. And that's why I think, Illinois at least is doing literally everything besides shutting businesses down because they know that is going to be real bad financially. Like for the state for the next decade, if you have to shut businesses down again, and there's no money.
Shutting businesses down would not be good. But you know what would be good?
What's that, Patrick?
A really good Italian dinner.
Ooh, tell me more.
I think that if you are not willing to go outside, or if you're willing to just drive somewhere and run in, maybe you should look at Club Lago Restaurant in River North as a way to get a really good, hearty winter. You know what? I had a good thing going, and I wrecked it by trying to go winter. Like,
you did.
A nice hearty winter meal. Hey, go to Club Lago and either get a carryout meal or they do delivery to different parts of the city and suburbs every day. And what they're doing is they're doing family style delivery. Like for next Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, they're doing a full or a half tray of their lasagna.
Ooh.
And their lasagna is not a regular menu item, so it's always special and it's always a treat. B, the servings are massive, but it is delicious. It is a thing that I will always get when it's on special because it's not a thing you get all the time.
Nice.
So it's like $60 for a half tray, which is actually pretty reasonable, all things considered. And I know they're doing like Elmhurst on Wednesday. So my sister ordered a half tray and she's driving to Elmhurst to get it because she lives in Bolingbrook.
Sure.
You know, it's like almost like meet halfway thing.
Sure.
Or Evanston? I think it's Evanston. Well, you know what? Whatever. No, it's Elmhurst. I don't know. It's one of those east cities. Anyway, I assume they still do normal carry-out meals. So
worth a call.
This is not a paid advertisement. It's just my favorite place in the city, and I would love for them to not have to go away.
Yeah, same here.
I don't know that I've read any PDFs this week.
I read The Picture of Everything. Is that the Vault book, the Dan Waters book?
Yeah, the other new Dan Waters book.
Yeah. I didn't care for it. It's very much a slow burn historical horror book.
Yeah.
Think like well,
I mean, you don't have to keep talking about it.
No,
we're not.
I can describe it. Can I describe it?
I don't know. Can you? You said think.
Well, I was going to, and then you were attempting to stop me from describing the book, which I guess I can if people really don't want to know what it's about or what it's like. It's like the Dorian Gray story from Oscar Wilde, but if it was killing people.
Okay. I feel like that's been done a lot.
I wasn't trying to say it to impress you.
I wasn't.
I was just describing it.
I wasn't arguing with you about it. I was just. You were saying what it's about, and I was saying what I thought about what you said it was about.
Okay.
Getting all hostile toward the end of this episode.
I'm just trying to sell some books, or at least help people decide if they want to buy some books. I mean, Jesus.
That's the wrong way to sell it. I didn't like this book. You might. When I worked at a video store
sometimes that works.
In high school, one of our key phrases was when someone's like, "How is this movie?" So bad, but you might like it. You just raised your voice.
I wouldn't say this was bad. I didn't care for it.
Okay.
But then I was trying to describe it in a way where people who might care for it would go out and buy it.
Would you say go out and buy it or come in and buy it?
Whatever works for them.
I had two different segues I was going to go to, but they're both so bad. I'll just outright change topic and say that even though when we're recording this, it's one thing, but by the time people hear it, either patrons who get to hear it early or people who hear it normally, Dal's going to be a year older.
Oh, I am, yeah, an entire year older.
Yeah, he's going to age an entire year.
In one day.
It's amazing. So let me be the first to not on your birthday say, happy birthday.
Ah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Technically, the Toku Nation boards sent me an automated message wishing me a happy birthday about 20 minutes before we started recording this podcast.
Why would they do that? It's not your birthday.
I wonder, how, like 6 o'clock on the day before my birthday. I wonder where their servers at.
Yeah. So
Where
are the
it's
Toku Nation
suddenly-
boards run in Japan?
I don't think so. I mean, it's an English language board that's very devoted to North American releases and things like that.
Huh.
So I don't.
You
I
said
don't
it was
know.
at 6 o'clock? No, it's 6 o'clock when we started recording. So I was going to say if it's
Well, it was a little. We started recording a little after 6.
okay.
So like, I mean, it was
So I mean, literally, that's England.
maybe. I mean, nothing about the site is UK centric in any
Huh.
way. There's UK fans, people from all over the world who's on the boards, but yeah, I don't. Their clock is set to a specific time zone that I thought was kind of peculiar.
Which Greenwich Mean Time is it?
I mean, it might be Greenwich Mean Time.
Well, I was the first one to do it.
It's
in person.
November 21st somewhere, apparently.
I did it in person.
Thanks, buddy. I do appreciate that.
Although I'm not a giant robot superhero.
No, there was an announcement today I thought was sort of interesting. You and I had run into Kyle Higgins back at C2E2 when things like
Oh yeah.
running into people in conventions were viable.
Oh my God! Can I just jump in right for a second?
Yeah, of course.
And say, I got that press release this morning,
Uh-huh.
and I was still in bed,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't have my glasses on, and I saw that press release,
Uh-huh.
and it starts with Power Rangers meets Invincible,
Uh-huh.
and I thought, man, another Power Rangers crossover? They're crossover with everybody.
I can't remember if I gave him Power Rangers Meets Invincible. I really think I did.
You might have, yeah.
I want to say that was something where I'd said that and he did a real like, oh, it's really good. I wouldn't claim it. That's probably an idea that existed in the ether anyway.
I mean, that's the thing you did say back in February.
It was a thing I said in February when Kyle Higgins, who we ran into at C2E2, was describing Radiant Black, his then unscheduled new Image comic series, to us, and I was excited to hear about it because it was it's basically Kyle doing the kind of Super Sentai stuff that he was doing on Power Rangers, but in his own universe now. So trying to do this is going to sound weird, but you have stuff like Power Rangers and you have stuff like Super Sentai, and while Power Rangers up until probably next year uses the Super Sentai suits and stuff from Japan and then tells its own story with it, the differences kind of go beyond cultural in that, like, Power Rangers series are geared towards younger fans, so this kind of stories and things they're trafficking in are very specific young adult and teenage oriented storytelling, teens with attitude. The Super Sentai stuff, and to maybe a greater extent the Kamen Rider stuff in Japan, while they still have target demographics like that, they're trying to sell toys to children, there's a little bit more flexibility on the kind of stories you can tell. You can tell a lot of different kind of maybe somewhat more mature stories because you can kind of seed that stuff in a little bit better. And looking at Radiant Black, which is the new Kyle Higgins book, it's doing a Power Rangers thing, but it's also doing a story about a slightly older character who's had some setbacks in his life, who is trying to find himself, and sort of how becoming a hero changes his perspective and changes his goals. That's not necessarily something you would do in a Power Ranger story because it's a little bit more simplistic for children. This is aiming for a slightly older audience that can handle a little bit more complexity. So I think it's pretty cool to be doing that. And as someone who is not a Sentai guy, I'm very excited about Radiant Black. I think the artwork looks cool. I think the character designs are cool. Kyle, when we talked to him, sounded very excited about it. There's a lot of real enthusiasm. It's an Image book, so it's definitely something the creators have to care about if it's going to succeed at all, more so than if they were just doing a project at a Boom or an IDW. Yeah, it comes out in February. I think it looks real good. The Michael Cho cover in particular looks gorgeous. Should be
Sure
a fun
does.
book. Should be a fun book.
And he and Michael Cho worked together on a short in the backup of Rise of Ultraman.
Is that right?
Yeah, the first issue that
neat.
Michael Cho did the art for it. And it was at that same C2E2 they told us all about Rise of Ultraman as well.
Yeah, which is, I think, getting announced the next day from Marvel.
Yeah, and he was so excited scrolling through his phone, showing us the Radiant Black art that he had.
Yeah.
And it's obviously got postponed because of the pandemic.
Yeah, I think even at that point, it was one of those, like, this year, but the kind of question mark of, like, and then it became, February 2021 because the whole industry shut down for a few months.
Yeah, that's fine. I like having things to look forward to.
Yeah. Could be a
like-
good series.
Yeah. This blew my mind. We talked about Geiger last week, the new Jeff Johns and Gary Frank image book.
Yeah.
Somehow it's already in Diamond System.
Yeah, weird. I mean, I think it's in the new catalog, so it probably is just a thing that got
But
put in there, like, a few days early.
It shouldn't be.
It really shouldn't be. It shouldn't
For
have a
an
code
April
outside of
shipping
February.
book. Yeah, and it's also an 8,000 code, so that's not really... That definitely means added after the fact.
Yeah.
But why would a single issue of an ongoing series have an item code already? Like, it shouldn't even be in previews until the previews that comes out in February, not for February.
I haven't looked at this month's catalog. I don't think it's dropped on Diamond's site yet.
It's like
Pardon me.
3 months early.
I wonder if it's, and this is pure speculation, I wonder if it's something where Diamond's trying to have a solution for those problems where Image will announce a book well in advance. People will come to a store and say, I want that. And stores are like, I can't do anything with that information. It's not in the catalog yet.
That would be amazing.
I think it could be that.
That would be a wonderful step in anticipating
Sure.
problems and needs and solving them.
Sure. I'm
I
just
guess
guessing
not
though.
anticipating, but yeah, no, I mean, God, I hope you're right. That'd be great. I mean, you were right about Cyclops.
I've always been
Or
right about
was Cyclops right?
Cyclops is always wrong about Cyclops.
Full circle, baby. Thanks for listening.
Keep reading comics.
This has been Contest of Challengers. Thanks for listening. Keep reading comics. Challengers is located at 1845 Northwestern Avenue in the Bucktown neighborhood of Chicago. 773-278-0155. Keep up to date with new releases and events at challengerscomics.com. Like Challengers Comics on Facebook, follow @Challengers on Twitter, and help fund this podcast at patreon.com/challengers.